The courtroom was silent, but the silence was heavy, almost suffocating. You could hear the faint hum of the air conditioner, the nervous shifting of shoes against the polished wooden floor, and the occasional cough that echoed like thunder in the stillness. At the center of it all sat Amara Johnson, a 27-year-old expectant mother, her hands trembling against the cold metal of the defense table. Her belly, showing the unmistakable signs of 7 months of pregnancy, was a living contradiction to the chains around her wrists. Amara had once been the pride of her small community in Atlanta. The daughter of immigrants, she grew up with dreams bigger than her neighborhood streets. A promising nurse in training, she was known for her kindness, her gentle way with children, and her deep faith in God. She wasn't perfect, no one is, but no one who truly knew her could ever imagine her in the place she now found herself, accused of a crime so unthinkable it had shattered her world. A crime that, if proven, would not only take her freedom, but possibly her life and the life of the unborn child she carried. 2 months earlier, Amara had been working as a live-in caregiver for the elderly widow of a wealthy businessman. Mrs. Whitmore, fragile and nearing 90, relied on Amara not only for medical care, but companionship. Neighbors often said the bond between them looked more like family than employer and employee. But everything changed one stormy night. Mrs. Whitmore was found lifeless in her bed. No signs of forced entry, no stolen belongings, but traces of sleeping pills, far more than her prescription allowed, were found in her system. The police didn't look far for a suspect. They pointed the finger at Amara. Why? Because she was the only one in the house, because she handled the pills, and because a week earlier, an argument had been overheard between the two women about Amara allegedly asking for an advance on her wages. It was circumstantial, flimsy, but it was enough for investigators hungry for a quick case closed. And so, despite her tearful protests, despite her insistence that she had loved Mrs. Whitmore like a grandmother, Amara was arrested. And now, in this cold courtroom, she faced the brutal machinery of justice. The prosecutor painted her as greedy and desperate, suggesting she had poisoned Mrs. Whitmore to gain access to her inheritance. They called witnesses, neighbors who recalled the argument, a pharmacist who noted Amara once refilled the pills early, a detective who claimed there was no other logical suspect. Amara's defense attorney, a young public defender juggling too many cases, tried his best, but he lacked the resources, the time, the firepower to match the state. And the jury? They weren't looking at her like a human being. They were seeing a stereotype, a young black woman, unmarried, pregnant, with financial struggles. To them, she wasn't Amara. She was a story they'd heard before. And as the days dragged on, the weight of hopelessness began to crush her spirit. Emotional breakdown. On the third day of trial, during cross-examination, Amara broke down. Tears streamed down her face as she pleaded with the jury. "I didn't do this. I swear before God, I didn't do this. I loved her. I cared for her every single day. Please, you have to believe me. Please." But instead of softening, the courtroom grew colder. Some juries averted their eyes, others stared blankly. The prosecutor scoffed, dismissing her cries as manipulative theatrics. The tears of a pregnant woman, mocked in the very place that was supposed to protect the innocent. The verdict. It took less than 5 hours of deliberation. Guilty. The word shattered Amara's world. Her legs buckled, and she nearly collapsed to the floor. The judge's gavel came down like a hammer of doom. 25 years to life. Her child would be born in prison. Her dreams, her future, her very identity erased with a single verdict. Prison, reality.
The first night behind bars, Amara sat on the thin mattress of her cell, hands pressed against her stomach, whispering prayers through sobs. "I will protect you. I don't know how, but I will protect you." Prison was no place for a pregnant woman. The food was poor, medical care was inconsistent, and the other inmates? Many were hardened, broken women who had seen too much of life's cruelty. Some mocked her, some pitied her. But in the quiet of those nights, Amara's faith flickered like a small, stubborn flame. She began writing letters to her unborn child, scribbled on scraps of paper, describing a world she still believed in, a world where truth mattered, where justice prevailed, where innocence wasn't crushed under the wheels of power. And then, a twist. 3 months into her sentence, a young journalist named Daniel Green stumbled upon her case while researching wrongful convictions. Something about the trial transcripts didn't sit right with him. Why was there no forensic evidence? Why wasn't Mrs. Whitmore's estranged son ever questioned, despite the fact that he stood to inherit everything? Why was Amara's defense so unprepared? Daniel began digging, and the deeper he went, the darker the story became. Amara's conviction wasn't just a tragic mistake, it was the result of a system rigged against her from the beginning. And if Daniel was right, exposing the truth could change everything. If you're still watching this story unfold, ask yourself this: how many Amaras are out there right now, crying, pleading, praying for someone to believe them? This is why Innocent Files exists, to give voice to the silenced, to shine light on the darkness. If you believe stories like this must be told, hit that subscribe button right now and share this video, because you never know whose freedom might depend on awareness like this.
The courtroom fell silent as the judge's gavel struck, sealing Maria's fate. Convicted. The word echoed in her mind like a death sentence. She stood frozen, her hands trembling, her swollen belly carrying the life of her unborn child. Maria was led away in handcuffs, her mother sobbing in the back row of the courtroom. To the system, she was just another case number. To her, it was the end of the life she had struggled so hard to build. Inside the cold, gray walls of prison, reality struck her harder than the conviction itself. Pregnant, isolated, and branded as a criminal, Maria was forced into a cell with little care for her condition. Nights were filled with echoes of despair, and each day felt like an eternity. Guards treated her like she was guilty beyond redemption, and other inmates whispered rumors that deepened her shame. But Maria refused to give up hope. She knew she was innocent. She knew the truth was still out there, buried under lies, corruption, and negligence. She whispered prayers at night, clutching her stomach, promising her unborn child that one day justice would prevail. As the appeal hearings began, the truth started to unravel. A key witness finally came forward admitting they were pressured by police to give false testimony. Another piece of evidence revealed that the so-called DNA match the prosecution relied on had been mishandled in the lab. Bit by bit, the lies crumbled. Maria sat in the courtroom once more, her hands clasped tightly, her heart pounding. This time, she wasn't alone. The gallery was filled with supporters, people who believed in her innocence. And then, the turning point came. A whistleblower from within the police department testified, revealing corruption and a deliberate cover-up. The original investigators had framed Maria to protect someone else, a man with powerful connections. The courtroom gasped. The judge's face hardened. Justice, long delayed, was finally catching up. And then came the moment that changed everything. The judge leaned forward, his voice steady. "Maria Rodriguez, your conviction is hereby overturned. You are free." Tears streamed down Maria's face as the shackles of injustice were finally broken.
She collapsed into her mother's arms, surrounded by cheers and sobs of relief. After years of suffering, after being branded a criminal and enduring prison while pregnant, Maria was finally vindicated. Her release wasn't just about her freedom. It became a symbol of resilience, of faith, of refusing to be crushed by injustice. Maria later stood before cameras, her child now in her arms, and spoke words that echoed across the nation. "I was innocent, but the system failed me. Let my story be a reminder. Justice is not a privilege, it is a right." Her case ignited reforms, sparking debates on wrongful convictions, prison conditions for pregnant women, and the accountability of those in power. But more than that, Maria's story gave hope to thousands of others still fighting for their voices to be heard.
Maria's story reminds us that injustice can happen to anyone, and the fight for truth is never easy. What do you think? Should the officers who framed her be punished? Share your thoughts in the comments. And if you believe stories like Maria's deserve to be heard, don't just watch. Subscribe to Innocent Files. Together, we can shine a light on the stories the world tries to silence.